Alright, welcome to the Star Trek CCG First Edition World Championships 2025. We are in the quarterfinals, and on the top of the screen we see Niall, who was playing Cardassians on day one, and on the bottom of the screen we have Alek. Now, Niall won the first day. He goes into this match as the number one seed, meaning in case of a true tie, he will advance due to his better seed slot. And on the bottom of the screen with Alek, we have the winner of the Warp Speed Cube Draft. Well, not actually the winner, that was Paddy, but since Paddy was qualified anyway, his slot was handed down to Alek, and he secured the hope spot, the 8th seed in the quarterfinals here. Niall is going to play a similar deck to the one he used on day one. It's a Cardassian Liberation Front deck. The deck list is already up. His day two deck, he says, only includes some minor changes. So while the deck list isn't up yet, we can refer to his day one deck. You should find it in the description. And Alek's deck for this match is already up. It is an Enterprise E Battle Stations deck. They see who goes first. Niall rolls a 4 and Alek rolls a 2. That means Niall is going to go first. They will start with the doorway phase, and Niall is going to show us an old school Q's tent and a battle bridge door. On Alek's side of the table, we can also see an old school Q's tent, and that will be his only doorway. As you will see, Alek's deck is very tight. It runs the bare minimum of 35 draw deck cards. Niall's deck is in the 80 card range, but he uses various engines that allow him to draw extra cards. One of them we will see seeded in a moment, and others will enter the table over the course of the game. There is Niall's Q's tent and his battle bridge. Players shuffle their 6 missions, and they give their opponent the chance to cut them. And as we will see, we will be entirely in the Alpha quadrant here. Niall puts down Locate Terrorist Leader, and Alek has Evade Sensors in the neutral zone. Niall follows with Orb Negotiations, the Cardassian homeworld in the Cardassia region. Alek has Evade Borg Vessel, a popular mission to build your outpost, since it's much tougher to battle there. Niall has Steal Breen Armament, a space mission. Alek has the new version of Access Archives that has been nerfed to a max of 40 points now. Niall brings out his second Cardassia region mission, that is Resist Occupying Forces. That's the mission he usually reports to in the Cardassia region. Alek has the Genesis planet. Niall has Clash at Chintoka. Alek brings a Cytherian Lure to the far left of the table. That is the mission that can be used as an alternative target for the Cytherian's Dilemma. And Niall has Verify Evidence in the Badlands on the far right. And Alek puts down Investigate Anomaly 2. That is a mission with a built-in Federation outpost. So on the left side of the table, we see Alek's outpost mission, and then 3 planets, another space mission of his. Then we have a planet of Niall's, Alex's 3rd space mission, and then we have the 2 planets of Niall's in the Cardassian region, 2 space missions outside of regions, and the final one, Verify Evidence, is in the Badlands. That is a 5 span, so it will be quite tough to reach for both players. So both players are perfectly balanced with 3 planets and 3 space missions. Niall is already preparing dilemma combos, and Alek likewise is looking at where to place his dilemmas. If we look at his deck list, we see a whole number of quite popular dilemmas. I see 2 copies of Hannonian Land Eel. I see 2 copies of Denevan Neural Parasites. I see the very popular Romulan Mind Probes that can be used to set up certain dilemmas that shut the mission down with a countdown. I see 2 copies of Friendly Fire in his list, Linguistic Leberkas. There's a Cytherians, there's the inevitable Dead End, 2 copies of the ever-popular Misinterpreted History, and 2 copies of Rules of Obedience. There's also 2 copies of Persistent Individuality, a super popular space dilemma right now. Also 2 copies of a Minion Disintegration Protocol, so all the meta dilemmas at the moment. The one thing that stands out a little bit is tricyanide poisoning. This is a very interesting one. If you have never seen that, look it up, because it can set a mission to 0 points for a while, and people have to think whether they actually want to complete a mission for 0 points or not. So all in all, as far as I can see, Alek has 22 dilemmas. So he will put 4 at most of Niall's missions, and he will also have some 3s in the mix. And Niall has 1 more dilemma for 23. So it looks like the very best that either of these players can hope for is 3 dilemmas under a mission. But most of the time we can expect them to run into 4s. Alek is done. Niall might put down his self-seed. It should be in one of the blue sleeves. There it is. And I assume by the time this video goes up, his deck list will already be posted, so we will know that this self-seed is going to be an artifact, a mysterious orb. That is an artifact that can seed at a space mission. He's still debating what to do. What Mysterious Orb does, it allows you to move 1 personal from anywhere in the game to anywhere else. It's a popular strategy, for example, to send Dr. Tolin Soren to the Nexus for an instant bonus point goodness. And Niall puts it under a planet mission here. Alek seeds Assign Mission Specialist, downloading his mission specialist to his outpost mission. He also seeds Federation Flagship Recovered and Federation Flagship Relaunched, grabbing the Enterprise E. And he also has the trifecta of Battle Stations Sovereign Class, Battle Stations All Hands, and Battle Stations Core Protections. This is a very nice engine that allows him to play 1 unique personal and 1 universal personal for free, but those free plays cannot be combined with any other free plays. And the other Battle Stations card allows him to draw 3 cards. Again, this cannot be combined with any other card draws. So it's a very beginner-friendly play 3, draw 3 engine. The other seed card he has in the bottom right corner is Engage the Borg. This increases the number of eligible personnel he has for his Enterprise Edict, because that usually is limited to only a few personnel, and Engage the Borg adds a few personnel to the mix there. As you can see, Niall has a battle bridge, so that means the Enterprise that was downloaded could be damaged, and Niall already puts a damage marker on it. However, there is nobody aboard, so there is no random kill, but Alek will start his Enterprise with some reduced attributes. Players shake hands, draw their opening hand, and then we're off to the races. With Niall's engine, he has reshaped the quadrant, downloading Cardassian Liberation Front. He also has new arrivals. And with Cardassian Liberation Front, instead of a regular card play, he downloads a stolen attack ship. And with the new arrivals, he plays a universal personnel for free. He then pitches his Defend Homeworld, that was one of his hidden agendas, and he's going to bring out Overseer Odo. It's probably in the other stack. There is Overseer Odo. He has a special download of Process Ore, and Niall is going to use that on Process Ore Mining. Process Ore Mining allows him to discard a card at the start of his turn in order to draw 2 cards with some cycling involved, and this also nets him 1 point per turn. He only gets the 2 card draw if he has 2 geology there. If he has only 1 geology there, he will only get to draw 1 card. But Overseer Odo has 1 geology himself, so Niall should be good there for some extra cycling. And at the end of the turn, he's going to draw 1 extra thanks to new arrivals. And with that, I think he sends it over to Alek. As I said, Alek can play 1 universal personnel and 1 unique personnel for free, and then he also has his regular card play. That looks like it's Kel Perim and a Martinez, and the other one is, I think, Madden. Don't remember his exact name. I think it's Martin Madden. So those are his 3 personnel that he puts into play. He no longer has any hidden agendas that he could use to download anything here. And if you look at his deck list, it's 1 ship, almost all personnel, and only 3 interrupts. So he's not going to run a whole lot of interference, but he might bring out some special downloads on his personnel. He sends it back to Niall, and Niall triggers his Process Ore Mining to discard a card from hand, and then he's going to draw something. It looks like he plays a Hidden Fighter to bring out a Hideki Cruiser. And probably also grabbing Established Landing Protocols in the process. And with the card text on Cardassian Liberation Front, he will replace his regular card play with a download of the card Revolutionaries. This one allows him to download 2 Cardassian dissidents, universal dissidents, if I remember correctly. So he sacrifices his regular card play and gets 2 universal guys for that. And with new arrivals, he can then play another universal personnel for free. So there's the Established Landing Protocols that hits the table. That was downloaded by the Hidden Fighter. Niall shuffles his personnel, and the ones he downloaded, I believe, are copies of Bronok. They have geology, so for the next turn he will have 2 geology for 2 card draws via Process Ore Mining. And there is Parn, that is his free play with new arrivals. And then he plays some copies of Awaiting Trial. This card plays for free if he has 3 Cardassians in play. At the end of each of his turns, he will get to draw an extra card if he has a captive. So at the moment, these events don't do anything. They just sit there, but if over the course of the game he gets a captive, he will get to draw more. He attempts the mission and he encounters a misinterpreted history, if I see that correctly. Misinterpreted history will kill the highest cunning personnel or the personnel with most treachery. So it looks like Parn has treachery. Overseer Odo, the other person I believe is Mason, who has cunning of 6 and no treachery. And these 2 remaining personnel can't beat the dilemma, so misinterpreted history goes back to be encountered again on the next attempt. Niall draws 2 cards to end his turn and sends it back to Alek. Alek plays James T. Kirk. He also plays Tolian Soren. And it looks like he brings out a Captain's Order card. I believe that is Divert Power. Divert Power is a card that lets you juggle attributes between weapons and shields and range if an engineer is aboard. So what it is, it subtracts 1 from 2 of the ship's attributes and adds 2 to the remaining attributes. So you can, for example, make your ship weapons and shields -1 for a range boost. Okay. Alek ends his turn. And the turn passes back to Niall. Niall will start off by discarding a card from hand to fuel processor mining, now that he has 2 geologists there. And he will most likely also replace his card play with a download of Revolutionaries again, bringing out 2 more dissidents. This one, I believe, is Chaban, which is a very good call because Chaban has Archaeology and Exobiology. Those are skills that require on both sets of requirements to pass misinterpreted history. For Archaeology, he would also need a law, and for the Exobiology side, he would need 2 leadership that survived the initial kill. So let's see who else he brings out. That might be an Ari. He has honor, transporter skill, computer skill. So not necessarily one of the skills he needs to beat the dilemma. Niall looks at his personnel again, decides what to do. He'll probably keep the geologists safe there. He puts one personal on the Hideki cruiser, takes off, flies next door, and he starts redshirting at Steel Green Armaments, only to find a persistent individuality. This one will kill personnel based on the number of classifications you don't have. So in order to get through, you need all the 7 different classifications. For each one you don't have, one personnel will be killed, and then you still need an engineer to get through. He sends it back to Alek. Alek plays Beverly Crusher, and the first personnel, I don't exactly see who that was, but he grabs an ocular implants. So that might actually have been Geordie. But ocular implants is immediately countered by a Kevin Uxbridge from Niall here. Beverly also brought out the medical tricorder, I believe, for some extra skills. Looks like Alek is still not happy with the cards he has in play, so he draws 3 cards and sends it back to Niall. Niall does his usual routine of discarding for processor mining. He's not using anything to indicate the points on the table there. What people who run processor mining often do is they count the number of cards that they have cycled away and keep track of points that way. Niall double checks his personal in play before he commits to downloading revolutionaries. That might be another Bronok, I'm not entirely sure. There's a Belva. I believe Belva has archaeology too. She's a medical classification personnel, so definitely something that would come in handy against the persistent individuality. I don't believe Niall has all the 7 classifications in play at this point to be guaranteed to get by the persistent individuality. But if he has, for example, 3 engineers in play, he could also attempt with only 5 classifications, take the 2 kills, and know that even if the random selection kills 2 of his engineers, he will still be able to get through the wall part of persistent individuality. But he is not prepared enough, so he ends his turn by drawing his 2 cards. Alek plays Matthew Dougherty, Paul Porter, and another copy of Martinez. And Niall responds by playing a Hidden Fighter, going for another Hideki cruiser. And it looks like Alek has also used a special download. That probably was the download on Paul Porter, who downloads any pad, and I believe he brought out the mission briefing pad, which allows him to select anthropology or biology and add that skill to his officer classification, Enterprise E personnel. Now he has a stack of cards aboard his Enterprise E. The Enterprise E is also repaired. He uses quite a lot of range to fly over to access archives, but he doesn't attempt and rather ends his turn there, drawing into a Dr. Royce and other personnel, and he sends it back to Niall. Niall cycles away, and Amanda Rogers, I believe, to draw more cards. He goes to his draw deck for another copy of Revolutionaries. And let's see which personnel he decides to bring out this time. That one, I believe, is a Tadim. That is a VIP. And the other one could have been Hogue, a civilian. So and that one looks like roguish, I believe. So he's stacking classifications because he has just put on the table a VIP, a science, and a civilian, with Belva's medical and Bronok's engineer, and I believe Jaban's. Oh, Jaban is also a medical. What's one of the others? Odo must have security, I believe. No, Odo is the officer. So he shows the different classifications for persistent invalidity. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I believe there are 2 of the engineers there. So Alek will get 1 kill. And even if he hits 1 copy of Bronok, the other one will still provide the engineer to go through. That, I believe, was Tadim. And they know that the engineer is still left. So they move on to personal duty. This one stops all but 1 leadership or officer, and that is usually a dilemma that leads into friendly fire. Niall double checks again. So, for example, if there are 5 personnel with leadership and officer, 4 of those would be stopped and 1 lead and officer goes on. And Niall is already shuffling his personnel because he knows that a friendly fire is the likely choice to come after that. He doesn't have the 2 leadership, 2 security now that so many of his leadership personnel were stopped, or he only had 1 to begin with. So friendly fire kills 1 personnel and stops the attempt and puts a 2 countdown on that dilemma, meaning Niall can't complete this turn and not the following turn either, so he sends it back to Alek. Alek plays, I believe, Thomas McClure and Worf and Dr. Royce, our favorite Bolian, with archaeology there. Now Alek has a good number of personnel. He points out the Federation flagship Renewed. That is the one that allows him to let personnel report aboard the Enterprise E. It also has a function that lets personnel play for free, but he's not using that because he can't combine that with his Battle Stations engine. So I believe Alek has his 2 mission specialists as well as several turns worth of personnel, but still he decides against attempting. He draws more cards and sends it back to Niall. The friendly fire has counted down to 1, but it's still on the mission, and Niall won't be able to attempt that mission this turn. He looks at the cards in his hand. I see a Security Chief Garrick there. I also see the triple affiliation Odo. Let's see which cards will hit the table now. Alek might have decided against attempting early because he sees the awaiting trial on the table, suspecting Niall to flip valuable prisoner as soon as one of his personnel is killed by a dilemma. Niall brings out Kira. Kira has, for example, double honor and the resistance skill. She also has leadership, which can help against misinterpreted history. And then we'll see another download of revolutionaries. I believe that is another Chaban. And that is, of course, what's his face? I don't know. Is it Dizzy? Probably not Dizzy. The Hideki cruiser that went over to Steel Brune Armament comes back. Niall looks at his personnel. He's going to assemble a crew that has either law and archaeology or exobology and 2 leadership after the highest cunning or most treachery personnel in the attempt has been killed. If he attempts that mission again, he puts some personnel inside the landed Hideki cruiser at resist occupying forces, and then attempts with another stack of personnel. Going back to the misinterpreted history, and he proceeds by spreading out his personnel. As we can see, there are 3 copies of the same personnel. That's Chaban. He has exobiology, so one of those exos will go through, and I believe Odo and Kira both have the leadership there, and Kira is killed. And it looks like Niall has misremembered the exact requirements on the dilemma there, because it looks like he can't pass. Maybe he thought it was just exobiology and 1 leadership. So it's over to Alek again. He plays Admiral Janeway, another copy of Inge Eiger, I believe. And now he attempts. Niall has his own copy of Persistent Inevitability, I believe. Inge has Engineer, there's a VIP, there's an Officer, there's a Science, there's a Security, there's a Medical in Martinez, and there is no Civilian, I believe. No, so it looks like this is going to result in 1 kill, but Alek is going to have the Engineer to get through the wall part of this. And that is Matthew Dougherty. He would be killed, but Niall, as expected, flips the valuable prisoner to relocate Matthew Dougherty to his away team in the same quadrant, and he proceeds to download Labor Camp, which will net him 5 points at the start of each of his following turns. Then he flips the Maglock, which requires 3 officers with high strength. There's Madden. There is Kirk. So they get through, but there is the Cytherians, which sends Alek's ship on a long trip down the space line. But hang on, he has Cytherian lure on the table, which is actually closer than the far end of the space line, so he can use that to redirect his ship. Because as far as I can see, that's only Access Archives with a span of 3 and Genesis Planet with 4, and Cytherian lure itself is a span of 5, so that's 12 away. He plays a Transwarp Conduit from hand to give himself double range for this turn, which is a very nice play here. The Enterprise E already has printed range of 10. Doubling it up, it gets 20. So he can move it all the way to Cytherian lure, scoring 15 points by getting rid of that dilemma. And then he even has the range to go back to that mission and attempt again. He encounters Niall's last dilemma there. That's authorized access only. For that, he needs officers, which he has plenty of, officer classifications. And then we see another Cytherians. Now, is that a misseed? No, it's probably Alek's own self-seed. So that's absolutely possible that he runs into the same dilemma at one location twice, one seeded by Niall, and then he meets his own copy of Cytherians. So he can score 30 points from that, but now he's definitely out of range despite the nice Transwarp Conduit trick. Now Niall scores 5 points from the labor camp and also more points from his process or mining. And the friendly fire has counted down now. So Steel Breen Armaments is up for grabs there. Niall discards a card from hand. It looks like that was a secret sabotage. He's going to cycle more cards. Secret sabotage is a situational interrupt that allows you to damage your opponent's undamaged ship if you have Cardassian dissidents at that location. That is not the case at the moment, so Niall proceeds by playing more personal. He brings out Tekeni Gimor and Triple Affiliation Odo. And then he'll probably look at completing Steel Breen Armament. Alek is on 15 bonus points at the moment. Niall is probably just under 10. He's counting everything up. For Steel Breen Armament, I believe he needs Anthropology, Honor, Leadership, and 3 Security. He might also be looking at skills to beat Misinterpreted History this time. Tekeni Gemo has double leadership, so he would help with the exo leadership part of the dilemma. Moving some personnel around. Odo has law, so he can help with the law and archaeology part. And it looks like Niall now has assembled the correct crew to make it through the Misinterpreted History. They look at the highest cunning, that is Tekeni, and then Odo has the law and Belva has the archaeology. So they finally get through this dilemma. Will we see Rules of Obedience? No, it's a dead end. Niall can't pass it at the moment because he needs 50 points for that. And it looks like right now he doesn't have the personnel in play to complete steel marine armament, so he sends it back to Alek. He plays an Anish, and Wesley Crusher makes an appearance together with Suzanne Dumont. The Federation personnel report directly aboard his ship, whereas Anish needs to play to the outpost. Now Alek's Enterprise E must do nothing but move to the far end of the spaceline or to Cytheran Lure, so we will see the ship move towards the left side of the table here. It only gets to... no, actually it gets to Cytheran Lure because it has 10 printed range, and I believe he also used the bonus on, or the function of divert power to give it range 12. So he scores his second copy of Cytherans. He is on 30 bonus points now, but no mission points. Sending it back to Niall, who does his usual thing of cycling cards with process or mining. Let's hope he doesn't forget to score points from labor camp as well. He plays more copies of Awaiting Trial for free. Yes, there are the labor camp points. So Niall is on 10 points from the labor camp, and I believe by now he's also on at least 5 points from the process or mining. So if he completes steel green armament for 35, that would put him above the dead end threshold. Plays another revolutionaries. There's Chaban and somebody else. And I would expect him to fly one of his ships over to the space mission that I believe has no further dilemmas there. Looks like he's going to leave some personnel there to escort the captive. Or maybe he's preparing skills for the mission. Double checking everything. Yes, so he takes off, flies next door, attempts steel green armament, and they have just checked the mission skills. So Niall scores that mission for 35 points. He's going to swap ship and fly back. Yes, and as we said, he's correctly pointing out that he has 10 bonus points from the labor camp. He's counting up his bonus points from process or mining, and it looks like he indeed is at or above 50 points, so he can try and proceed at resist occupying forces and see what's after the dead end there. Of course, he's going to double check which personnel he wants to keep safe. He does that by landing his ship on the planet's surface, and he's going to redshirt with a lone Bronok. The dead end is gone. Oh, it's no longer an issue. There's Hannonian land eel, and that is going to eat poor Bronok alive. To beat that, Niall needs to bring security and science and strength greater than 50, which should not be a problem at all. He has the resources for that, but I think there is one more dilemma after that, and usually what you can expect after a huge planet war like this is our favorite flapjack dilemma, Denivan neuroparasites, which kills half of the personnel in your away team, rounded up. So probably Niall will have to send 8 personnel, so that 4 will be killed. Maybe he can do it with 7, but that would still be 4 kills. I don't think he can do it with 6 guys. But it looks like he's not attempting, rather he's drawing at the end of his turn. 4 copies of Awaiting Trial net him 4 draws, plus the New Arrivals draw, plus his regular end of turn draw. That's 6 cards. Sending it back to Alek. And Niall plays another Hidden Fighter for good measure. Alek plays Data and Jean-Luc Picard and Blurry Face that I can't make out here. He also plays a Ready Room Door, getting a Defiant Dedication plaque out for even more range, but Niall immediately counters that with a Kevin Uxbridge to deny Alek the extra range there. I think the third personal Alek played is Leitner, the one that can download a gun. And he flies to Genesis Planet for 4, to access archives for 7, and back to evade Borg vessel for 11 range spent now. The mission should be empty, and Alek is going to complete the mission for the printed 35 points, and James T. Kirk is also going to contribute one of his traits, probably the attribute, for another 5 points. And I believe that is a Stellar Cartography mission specialist. Richard Wilkins, I believe is his name, who scores 5 points from that. So if my count is right, that's 5 bonus points from Kirk, 5 bonus points from Richard Wilkins. So that was 45 points for that mission. And Alex has 15 points from Cytheran Lure and another 50 points from Cytheran Lure. So he should be at 75 now, to Niall's 50 or 51 or 52 or whatever it was. They're trying to do the math correctly there. I believe Alek is out of range, so he's going to draw a card. Or rather 3 cards with his Battle Stations engine. Not sure what they are debating at this point, but it looks like we're back to Niall. He's going to process one more time for extra draws. There's another copy of Awaiting Trial. Such a powerful draw engine there, if you can get the captive. There's the Security Chief Garrick. Very useful because you can download a Cardassian Disruptor Rifle for extra strength. And with that bonus, Niall might actually be able to get through the Hannonian Land Eel with only 6 personnel. And indeed, he reaches for his Q's tent, and there is the Cardassian Disruptor Rifle that gives all his personnel a bonus of strength +3. So with their printed strength of 6 or 7 or sometimes 8, and some Odos, he will get through the Hannonian Land Eel, and the gun will also help him keep one more personnel alive. against the Denivan neural parasites that he is undoubtedly expecting at this point. Counting up the total attributes, the 2 Odos, and Garak himself with a printed strength of 8, I believe. He has to send a few more guys along for good measure there. Bronok, I believe, has printed strength of 8 himself. So with the Odos and the Bronoks, he will get past that dilemma with 5 personal. He does some switching there. He makes sure that he has counted the strength correctly. Yeah, with the gun, he should be good. And the Denivan will then select 3 out of those 5 personnel to be killed. And Niall can choose one of those 3 selected people to be safe because he has a disruptor there. Yes, and that was the reveal that surprised exactly nobody. Security Chief Garak and Overseer Odo. And is it Hogue? I don't know. They are selected, and Niall can now save one of them due to the firepower he brought along. But it looks like there's yet another dilemma there. For resist occupying forces, Niall requires 3 officer and 3 honor, or Kira and Legate Damar. The final dilemma is a minion disintegration protocol. At a planet location, this one kills the security with the most skill dots, and then to get by, Niall still needs 2 security left or 6 universal personnel. But with this big stack of people, it looks like he can get through that. He's looking at his personnel. There are lots of universals, so he might actually attempt without any security at all, so as not to take another kill, and then get through the dilemma because he has 6 universals, and that is indeed what he does here. The Aries are officers, not security personnel. Then he encounters his own self-seed, the mysterious orb, and he completes that mission. And there we already see the handshake. Alek looks at the remaining dilemmas there. Sees a higher the fewer. There's the dead end, which he could have passed. So he probably would have walked right through that mission on his next turn. So this one was a real nail-biter. I think at this point he demonstrates to Niall that he had everything in play, that if he had had another turn, he would have won on that turn. But that's often how it goes on that level. So it looks like Niall has completed resist occupying forces there. To make sure he got to 100 points, we had the 30 printed points on resist occupying forces, but it's worth 10 more points if Cardassian Liberation Front is in play. So that's 40 printed points, 40 points from that, 35 points from his space mission for 75. He had labor camp points that were worth 15 points at this point for 90. And it looks like there were already 10 turns in for 10 points from process or mining, getting him to 100. They are looking at Cytherian Lure here, but Alek is already cleaning up the table. There is no point debating the ifs and whens of this game now. Alek played a very nice deck. If you want to build a deck of your own, look at his deck list. It is only 35 cards in the draw deck. It's easily built, and as you can see, you can play 3 personnel per turn, you can draw 3 cards, you can have a bit of flexibility with your interrupts, and it has a lot of star power. You can play with the Next Generation Movies crew, you have familiar faces, you have Worf, you have Picard, you have Data, you have Wesley, if you want to play with him at all. And it's a very nice deck and a powerful deck, as we could see in this game here. He had Niall on the ropes, but the Scotsman prevailed, and he will move on to the semifinals, where he sees his fellow UK traveling companion, Paddy Ty. I'll try and see if I can get a commentary for that video done as well. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this one. If you have any comments, feel free to sound off. For the moment, expand your power in the universe. Bye bye.